What's going on, guys? So, Strong Life podcast we have, but I wanted to do something that, quote unquote, has nothing to do with the right thing to do. I just want to dig into my passion. I've been friends with Henri Skiba for a long time. I was introduced to him pre-2010, and I feel so bad that I'm not far from Donnie Blanks, and I just met him 2 weeks ago. I feel horrible. Well, I don't know why the Iron Gods didn't bring us together earlier.
The thing is, when I came into the industry, I knew about you, of course. I followed your blueprint, and we just were ships passing.
Yes, but that breaks my heart when I don't meet the people I want to meet early. So I'll say this, for people watching, if you want to learn more, you guys actually did older YouTube videos where you were doing in-person podcasts, Zoom podcasts. You have a lot of videos where you're talking, and the whole time I'm watching is I said, how did I never come across any of this? It's very inspiring. So we're here at your gym, Real Gym, which you're closing this gym down. You're moving on into a new field, and we're gonna just talk about stories, origin stories, because we all kind of grew up not far from each other in very blue-collar areas. So Carteret, that's right, Rahway, and then Edison. Was across the street from me was Ford's. 1 block down was Woodbridge, and so I think we're going to have a lot of cool stories to share.
All right. Well, first of all, let me just say, Zach, like you said, mentioned it took so long in order for us to meet, but there's always a purpose with things, and I'm looking that we're finally starting to do this stuff together, and it gives me the opportunity, Donnie the opportunity, to talk about what we learned, because so many people misrepresent the early years. I really believe that looking back upon it, we had to learn a lot of stuff, and we passed it, we paid it forward to the guys. And I even heard, when I heard the first time about you, Zach, that an innovative young guy going out there in backyards teaching kids because you were so passionate about what you did. Yeah, that's true, right? Yeah. And I just look and I say, it's so nice to see that the next generation, Donnie's younger than me, and of course you're a lot younger than me too, and it's in good hands because you still look to the past. I always believe that a lot of these people nowadays, they don't realize that a lot of the new things come from the past. So I always say, if you want to learn something new, look towards the past. That's the next trend.
I mean, it's the foundation of everything.
Right.
You know what I mean? We took, blueprint from you. You took the blueprint from, the people that exceeded you. And it is, you keep layering it, and then it's guys that are following our paths. But yeah.
One of the things that I don't mean to jump on it so much. I just really, because Donnie is he's a hell of a lifter. And whenever I want to learn something about deadlifting, he has his own way of doing things. He had all these little secret workouts, and every now and then he's sharing the things with me. He doesn't share all of them, guys, but he shares some of them.
Myself, you know what I mean?
This guy, he could pull I can't say the words.
I saw videos, and still pulling. Come on, big dog.
Yeah, you can't
I'm telling you, the person that keeps growing and learning is the person that's going to keep going. I'm not done yet. The last thing I told Louis was that I saw Louis, and he said the only thing he regretted about anything was not being able to compete again. I said, Louis, I promise you that I'm going to get out there and compete again, because I can't have my guys, me tell them to go into the fire and not be willing to get burnt myself.
Right.
So I'm saying that, that's some of the things that, you guys have the passion, and it's good to see that you guys still have it and moving forward towards with it, because that's what I'm trying to do.
I mean, you got me back training again and competing again.
I love it, because Don, you do everything so, you always do it the right way.
A couple things here that while we're talking about history is, I had Isaiah do some B-roll down here. There's York plates, Billard, Weeder plates. A lot of people don't know that the original Joe Weeder offices was Union City. Wasn't
really?
Up in
I'm
Syracuse area too. Yeah.
Dave Draper
not Syracuse,
worked in New Jersey.
Secaucus.
Yeah, up in North Jersey. So Dave Draper worked in the Weeder offices. Then they moved to California. When I was here a week or 2 weeks ago with you, I purchased standard plates. Was Barbell, New Jersey?
I've always seen them around here, but I've never known where they come from.
Here's what's interesting. So you're talking about I always wonder, like, who touched these weights before us? What did they do? To me, I love that guys got so strong with like a squat rack, you know, like sometimes a squat stand, right? And so I want to kind of get a little bit of the story. You spoke about Mr. Penna,
Okay.
who was your first mentor, and then ironically, Donnie met you, was it at the Atlanta Club, which is a place that I trained out of. So we were always, I think, missing each other by, I don't know, could have been months, a few, you know, moments in time missing each other.
Well, I'm just happy it came together. Before, I just want to tell you, you got to remind me later on. I'll talk about Mr. Penna, but when you talked about Weeder, all right, I have a great Weeder story.
Let's hear it.
All right. One of my friends, he was an older guy. He was actually one of the first Mr. New Jersey, 1941, right? He was an older gentleman, and he used to train at our gym when he was 90. And he told, he was 90. He told him and Joe Saratelli used to train together. And what he told me was that he was famous because Weeder was in Jersey. You're right about that. What he told me was that he was training for one of the Jersey contests, and he met this fellow because what he did was he was dirt poor. In those days, people had nothing. So what he trained with was like wagon wheels or something to that effect. And what happened, Joe Weeder, as he told me, he met him. He says, "What are you doing there?" He says, "Well, that's how I train. I can't afford plates." All right. Next magazine, or maybe one or two magazines down the cover, right, had a picture of Joe Weeder, legendary, with cleaning a pair of wagon wheels. That's the truth.
Dang it, that dirty dog. And guess what? Even though that happened in the 40s or 50s, whenever he came out with his I think 40s and 50s was Strength and Health magazine, Bob Hoffman. But these stories is actually commonplace still today. You know, Donnie, let's say Donnie teaches me his deadlift technique. 2 weeks later, I'm making a video telling people, look at what I learned. And that's, to me, it goes against, obviously, there's a lack of ethics there. But I was watching you guys on your older YouTube videos, and you were talking about kind of going back with like isometrics, which was popularized with the York barbell iso rack. And I think it's actually...
Doing a podcast. Yeah, I'm good. Yeah.
That's all right.
That's all right. It's cool.
We're keeping it real. We're not cutting anything. Yeah. To me, what's like inspiring is what they had to do to get strong with minimal, or like you're saying, a guy training on wagon wheels. That's probably why I also so inspired by Dr. Ken Leisner. He would take railroad ties and get somebody to weld them on. To me, there's something very special about people who are making things.
Right, it's ingenuity. It becomes an extension of yourself. And
Yes.
It's like, you know, that's the magic of it all. You know what I mean? And when you create, and it's a constant evolution, that's what it's all about. Like it just, to me, it carries on forever.
Well, it's like you worked in the music industry. When I feel, you know, growing up in the 70s and 80s, that music, there was, first of all, you couldn't just, there was no internet, so you had to go and play in front of, I don't know, a crowd of 3 on the street, but it was part of you. It was your creative side became your music. To me, that's what lifting is.
And this guy.
That's a good analogy. Yeah. You know, it is. It's your expression, and everybody's adaptation to the art is a little different. So Skiba does things a little different. You know, you do things a little different. I do things a little different. There's no right or wrong. You know what I mean? It's just how you apply it and where it's applied. And a lot of the new guys, I call them YouTube or internet trainers. You know, we started from nothing. We didn't have any social media, so we had to learn. We had to apprenticeship. You know, that's what I call it. Like we were in there doing it. These guys watch it. They go, they get the schooling, and then they think that it's applicable to everybody. But knowing the way we came up, every unique individual that you're dealing with, there's different, you know, your biomechanics are a little different. They might recover a little different. There's all different things that we have done so much, and we have enough under our belt that we can apply it and twist it and turn it so that everybody's benefits from it. Right?
Let me ask you this. So he's talking about you had to go and lift, right? So I'm looking at these platforms that were made. So we mentioned
by hand.
That's what I'm saying. You made it. You figured it out. So when you mentioned Mr. Penna, this is what it reminded me of, because your buddy Kenny Toth posted photos of him lifting with bars that had like junkyard stuff on it, or training with tree logs before the book Dinosaur Training came out. So this is what it made me think of. Then we're gonna let you take this story. When I first went to, my first gym was the Metuchen YMCA. Okay, it was like 1,200 square feet, all York equipment. All I thought to myself is, I want to work so hard so the strongest, biggest guys recognize me working hard, and then I earn their respect. They want to help me. How did it work with Mr. Penna? Did he see something in you where he said, all right, now I could help this kid?
Mr. Penna was one of the most, he was such a giving, generous man, not only in life, but like in teaching lifting. And the thing that was so amazing about him, that he could motivate anybody. And when he found us, because we decided, we were very...
Us, you and Kenny?
Yeah, Kenny Toth and I were on a team. It was called Ray's House of Iron. It was legendary. We used to go, we used to, you know, win all the different things. But the thing that he saw in us, he showed us and we listened. And then he took us under his wing and he finally brought us down. We were able to go down to his little dungeon.
Wait, where did he find you guys? See you training? What gym was this?
I think the first time that his son was a big wrestler, and I think we started hooking up from that. And then eventually we heard of his son was legendary in strength. And so we wanted to be strong like him because he had huge legs. His son actually made it all the way to third place Mr. America, and also won so many different contests in powerlifting. He was the most incredible squatter, just like his dad. And we were able to go to his little place where he trained, right?
Which was where?
Which is in Carteret. I think it was on Soltez Ave. It's still there. And he invited us downstairs and just opened his house up to us. Him and his wife and his family.
So his gym was his basement? Ray's House of Iron was
Ray's
his basement?
house was in his basement. It was no bigger. It was no bigger than than, how can I put it? Maybe 300, 400 square feet. Thank you, Zach.
Thank you.
And the whole thing about it, everything was custom made. Mr. Penna was a genius. His brother was the world's best mathematician, so he learned other stuff about like how to weld and do mathematics, and he incorporated all that into his training. He was so far ahead of the curve that when he started teaching us stuff, I mean, he used to get stuff from Russia when he used to go and travel, you know, and he used to bring it back to us, like eating or drinking chlorophyll back in those days.
What was that?
It had something to do with oxygenating your blood. As a matter of fact, I've seen some new lifters doing it again.
Yeah.
But the most amazing thing about Mr. Penna, when he brought us in, you know, all the time, everything was like, he would never tell us when we're going to a contest. Never. That's why I never tell guys how much weight's on a bar. Just lift the damn thing. If we're gonna do it right as far as a coach, my job is to write the number down, your job is to lift it. We both do our jobs, we're both gonna be happy, right? Like you, buddy. But listen, some of the things that he did that was so innovative was, I remember he used to work for the railroad, right? And he told me stories that he would be on a railroad site, taking pieces of scrap iron and building a bench out there. I'm talking rudimentary. He was out there, he'd build the bench out there, and you see him training with a log, or sometimes it had a barn, some stuff.
What year was this about? Years? 70s?
Might have been
80s?
early 70s, I would
Early
say
70s.
70s. All right?
Amazing.
And what he did was so amazing was, I've seen him do stuff that I've seen the Russians do, and he mimicked a lot of it. A lot of the Russians, what they used to do, they used to put logs on their back and do jumps. Well, he took it a step further. He had logs on his back and used to race trains. One time, this is a proven fact.
I love this guy.
He was, Mr. Penna, I miss you, man.
Racing trains.
He would race trains, and one time he was racing a train. They brought security down there, and they brought him down, and Mr. Penna said, "What do you want?" He says, "We had some complaining with some guy trying to race and rob a train." He said, "Race and rob a train? Bullshit, I'm just trying to beat it."
Wasn't that in the first Superman where he's racing a train? But that was like 80s.
Yeah, but he had a log on his back. He had a log on his back, and that's what he used to do. He used to do giant lunges. He was the first person I've ever seen use chains. And one of his bench press machines was nothing but a leg press with all these plates stacked on top. He'd get underneath it and bench press it. I remember one time we came down in the cellar. He was such a stubborn man. He was laying there with the weight on his chest. I said, "Mr. Penna, what's..." He said, "I'll get it, don't worry about it." And I'm like, he just was tenacious. it made all of us a better lifter, just being around him.
I also love that you guys called him Mr. Penna. That was just normal, how we grew up.
He was like Miyagi.
He was, Miyagi.
And I'll tell you, as far as a person, I knew stories at one time a kid had nowhere to go. And he brought him home one day with his wife and he says, honey, this kid has nowhere to go. What can we do? She said, pull up a plate. Let's make a plate for him and we'll take care of him. Just an all-around incredible man. He gave to everybody.
And so what happened to that kid, do you know?
No, I think he became part of the family. He became one of our lifters. All of a sudden, people would come out of nowhere and they were part of the group and we just said, that's fine.
In the basement.
Yeah, in the basement.
You used to actually hear a lot of those stories of like guys, guys in there by the time, if you're in your 50s, I heard a lot of guys saying, I learned to lift out of this guy's garage or basement in the neighborhood.
Well, we always intended to stay in the garage. We used to call it the Hole. Our place was called the Hole.
Yeah.
And just to tell you, we had a couple names. We used to call it the Hole, but the best name that Mr. Penna gave us as a moniker, he used to call us the Minutemen, because he would call me up on a Saturday morning, right? I had, other plans and stuff like that. He says, Henri, what are you doing? And I said, Mr. Penna, I'm here with my wife doing something. He says, you want to do something? I said, yeah, I'll do whatever you want. Okay, we're lifting in a contest. I said, Mr. Penna, he said, don't worry about it. You go there, you lift the weight, you go home, you'll be happy. And we did it all the time, and so he would call us the Minutemen. And he would say, on a minute's notice, those guys are ready to go. And he used to motivate us so much. Some of the terms he would use, he would stay there, and I would do anything for that cat. He would stay on the side, he'd say, come on, Henri, lifting balloons, baby, lifting balloons.
What does that mean, lifting like it's light?
Like it's light. He said, I got goosebumps talking about the old man. And not only that, but he'd say, because I was like one of the first psych people, I would run halfway across the room to come in and lift because I was really pretty crazy. And during that time, he would say, come on, Henri, light the fuse. And light the fuse meant get to that bar and explode it, blow it off the floor.
So, you're talking about Mr. Penna using tree logs and stuff. It brings me to, Donnie, you grew up in Rahway, right? So I worked at Butch Cole's, which I think was around since forever. And so my first quote unquote time lifting like odd objects was I bartended, and their setup was very weird. You didn't have like kegs just connected. You had to go out to the sidewalk. You had to lift like this steel door. You went down these steps that were like disintegrating, falling apart. And you had to carry the kegs upstairs.
Keg?
You had to carry kegs upstairs.
Were they like little kegs
or
the full ones?
They were the full kegs. You had to carry them up the stairs and then inside. And in the wintertime, if it rained or snowed, it melted on the stairs. So the stairs were frozen. So drunk guys would come and help, and they would take like two 2x8s, lay them down, and you'd have to roll it. And guys were spotting you. And I remember in the summertime, I worked a double shift there, 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. And at like 4 p.m., one keg goes out. 15 minutes, the last hour was me carrying those 4 kegs. So, Donnie, talk about growing up in Rahway. Rahway, blue-collar town, which also had the GM plant. Where I grew up in Edison was the Ford plant. Those are gone now. Rahway and Edison was known for working class people.
Yeah, I grew up in the projects right on 1 and 9. I had an amazing childhood, and my father, he trained boxers. That was like part of his trade, what he did. And so, growing up very young, we were always involved with body weight exercises. So a lot of guys didn't believe me at the time, like now, but my father, he would, as we got older, we worked up to doing 1,000 push-ups a night. So no matter how long it took,
1,000 push-ups.
We had to do 1,000 push-ups
throughout the day, or just
it would be we were young. I guess we were getting ready for bed between 7 to 8 o'clock. You had hours to knock it out before you went to sleep. And no matter how many sets or whatever, you did as many as you could, and we would get creative. But that's what we had to do, and that then it evolved into. Remember the cement weights?
Yes.
Weights set out
filled with
out
cement.
Front. Right.
That's how we started.
And
Sears.
we
Where
had
did you
a
get
bench.
them from?
I think it was like something like Sears or something like
Sears,
that.
we all got,
And yeah, that was our first weight set. So the whole neighborhood would be out bench pressing and you know, working out in the yard. And then it evolved. I remember one time what happened was, I'm not proud of this. We were very young. Everybody was benching. You know, it was actually in front of my house, and I came over and I got pinned under the weight. And, you know, in my environment, you know, that's like, holy snap, you know, we were all pretty thorough. We could all handle ourselves. But then, you know, if you get pinned under the weight, it's like, I can see the twinkle in certain people's eyes. Like, maybe I can beat this kid, you know? So that year, that's when I just went hard, you know, behind
How
the
old were
scenes.
you about?
I guess I'd have to be anywhere between 10 and 12.
Yep. It's interesting how back then, when we were you still heard the weightlifting will stunt your growth, but there was you heard it a little bit, right?
The thing is, I think what a lot of people the perception was like when you looked at ollie lifters, you know, they're bow-legged, and they lift tremendous loads and they start young, right? You know, and we know now, you know, different protocol. What I found out for myself, and this is what I always applied, and this is why I guess, you know, I think I'm built for the deadlift, but I always looked at that as being the main lift, where a lot of people took squatting as the main lift, then deadlift, then maybe bench and overhead press. But I put more importance in the deadlift because I felt like that was the only true lift. It's just you against gravity. There's no down and up, you know, you can't use momentum. It's just you against gravity, creating inertia. Right.
Yes.
So, you know, I put a lot of emphasis there, and over the years when I started training kids and training people, I realized that to get around the stunting the growth, like you know, we used to have to go to the library to read, you know, and I would read up on all different types of things, and one of the things I learned was that the stunting of the growth came from when you're premature, you know, in your early years, if you do something a lot of times, the body, like, so if you lift loads, certain loads you put on your back, your body will prematurely fuse. If you're doing it a lot of times, you know, your growth plates are fused to be more stable. So if I squat one time or once a week or not frequently, your body's not gonna adapt to it.
Yeah.
The adaptation part of it, when you lift certain loads at a certain age, the body adapts prematurely.
Yeah.
So I would always wait till a kid hit, I wouldn't go with the chronological age, I would go with the biological age. So when I look at acne, you know, when they started getting acne and reaching puberty, that's when I would load them with the back squat, but not before that.
Tony, I like that. I never really...
And that's just like my own little
and you've been successful
research. So my kids always deadlifted, you know, and I would squat, I would front squat. I felt like a loaded back squat, you know, you're stressing the spine a certain way and your body will prematurely fuse. Ollie lifters, you know, predominantly a lot of them are on the shorter side. Right. So, you know, that was my...
Also, a lot of the weightlifters who were overseas or athletes in general, like my dad grew up in Romania, he said,
really?
Yeah, he said in his young years, every month, the boys lined up in their boxers and the sport coaches came and said, okay, you're now focusing on these two sports. So they put my dad in like swimming and boxing. And then if you were shorter, you were a gymnast, wrestler, weightlifter. If you were tall, basketball, volleyball, water polo. So your sport was by what you were genetically going towards. And then I think I had heard Louis Simmons spoke about the mentality of the athlete. So if somebody is more, you know, I've said this a lot, like growing up in Edison, you grew up in Rawway, Carteret, you know, there's a different kind of wrestler that comes from a street place than, not that they're always better, but like you could, you know, now we see the kids going to these private schools, so it's hard to say where a kid's from, but I remember, for example, my younger brother his high school, they went to the Elizabeth wrestling tournament. The Elizabeth kids were tough AF. They were nasty. They were physical. Whereas the other kids were trying to be super technical. When Elizabeth kids was like, get the hands on them and it was over. But, you know, Rawway, I had heard about it from Rawway Wrestling, Coach Stuber.
Stu was actually the first person that introduced me to
Was he your
a gym.
teacher in
he was
school?
he was our gym teacher in junior high school, and he had a morning class where we would tumble.
Yes, gymnastics.
Yeah, so that's, and then Stu is the person that told me, he said, listen, the only sport in the world where somebody knows exactly what you do when you walk in the room is weightlifting.
Oh, because
Your physique.
Yes.
Right, and that always stuck with me. He was like, you know who lifts.
Right.
And I was like, wow,
So
that
junior
stuck
high
with me.
was what, up to 9th grade?
We went to 9th grade in Rawway.
When I worked at Butch Cole's, Coach Stuber worked the liquor store, and he ran the liquor store and bouncer. And at the end of every night on Saturdays, we worked till 3 a.m., had a live band, cleaned up, and then Stube and I always did 100 push-ups, but it was never regular. Stube would do like those Superman Jack LaLanne push-ups. Then he would show me how to get under a stool and lift it, which I think was...
Oh, yeah.
Who would you have seen that in the magazines?
There was one guy the same guy used to do all the hammer.
Yeah, it was, Slim the Hammer. It was
Yeah.
like all these strongman stunts.
He was incredible.
So,
right.
Speaking of Stube, his impact on community, from what I've seen, and when we were here a couple weeks ago, you said a lot about that, like you gotta get into the community. So you came to Keyport how many years ago?
I came to Keyport 23 years ago.
Oh, wow, okay. Did you have a gym in Rawway or anything?
No.
Okay.
So what happened was I had moved to Perth Amboy my senior year.
I was wondering how you got to the Atlantic
No,
Club
not my
living in
senior.
Rawway.
Yeah. I was still going to Rawway High School, but I had moved to. My father had bought a club in Perth Amboy.
Like a nightclub?
Yeah. So Pier 8, it was Club 18 at the time. And then that's when. But he had got it a couple of years before that, so we would always be out there. And then that's when I stumbled upon Atlantic Gym.
Which was, Atlantic Gym was it was like a yellow building. I used to pass it when we would drive. My parents would take us to the beach in Perth Amboy, and I lived in Edison. And so, by the way, the beach in Perth Amboy ain't like I live in Manasquan. Now, my kids don't even know. So I used to see all these trophies, and my imagination was like, who's in there? What are they doing? How do you get the trophy? So was that the first gym you trained out of?
No, the first gym I worked out at was Mid-Jersey Gym in Rawway. Well, actually the first gym was Stuber's. He ran the weight room for the football team in Rawway.
At the high school?
Yeah, at the high school, but it was at the field house. And he had, I still have my Rawway weightlifting. It was sky blue. Rawway's red and black, but it was a sky blue Rawway weightlifting shirt. So people thought I was in Rawway prison, but
because they had a weightlifting team
and they had
boxing team.
Right, and so that was Stu was the person that got me into like organized lifting.
Yeah.
And then Stu is the one. So everybody ran to the bench press. So we had a long pulley row. And a plate loaded.
Yep.
And Stu was like your back is everything, And so everybody would be benching. I was doing the long pulley rolls, and I would do the whole plate stack. So it would be like 6 plates on top. Nobody would, it's not a lift that nobody liked, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then I went to the T-bar rows the same way.
Oh my God.
So then, I guess I owe my back to Stu because
Stu.
yeah.
Was it one of those bars in a corner or an actual machine?
No, it was bar in the corner for the T-bar
Like
row.
what you have here,
But
Kyle.
the long pulley was it was a machine, but it was
plate loaded.
Plate loaded.
What were some of the things Stube do you feel taught you that have you? Because I look at now that we've, I'm so glad I've been introduced to you. I start looking at some of these videos you have, and there's always kids. It seems like there was community events
He
here.
was vested in the kids, and I think he took a special. Well, he loved all the kids, and the thing about Rawway, we have different neighborhoods, and we have all the different neighborhoods. But when we were we would always collectively together. Like, so it was like a unity. You never looked at, he's a white kid or a black kid or, everybody was Mexican, no matter if you're Puerto Rican or Dominican. You're a Mexican in Galway. That was, we thought you were all Mexicans. But that's so one thing I take from Stube, that he made everybody feel equal and inclusive. So like you never felt, and Galway for the most part, it was a really good environment to grow up in. And speaking of like tough guys and tough, like you knew, like you respected everybody who was, it was just like a mutual respect.
Yes. Yeah. Still a lot of tough dudes came out of there. Like in the early 2000s was the Garay family.
Right.
That whole family.
So the Garay, so they had Armando was the grandfather, right? And he had a gas station right outside the project. So when we would walk down to catch the bus, we would go into his gas station. He had the vending machines, and we would stick our arm up there and steal a candy. And he'd grab you by your ear and pull you and, snatch you up. But he was like, intricate in our neighborhood. Like he was he was a monster of a man too.
They were
like,
all, I think the whole family.
Yeah, they were like, they were. And a couple of, I think Tony's father played pro ball, but they were all, and their family. What I loved about growing up with, Armando, he was something else. But Boy's father, Carlos, Tony,
yeah.
they had the mansion in Galway, right?
They own basically a whole cul-de-sac.
Right. So, but this was the cool thing about them. We project kids would be in their swimming pool. You could go to the house anytime. It didn't matter, invitation or not, swimming, cookouts, everything. Like it was like they included everybody. It was now I get goosebumps. Like their family was like truly like they were like the Kennedy family of Galway. But you didn't feel like, I don't know, it was just a very special time. And I take my kids by Milton Lake and I show them, the houses, and I always talk about how their family was very, they included all of us. Like it was a beautiful time to grow up, and my wife was actually good friends with one of their nieces,
Yeah.
And we used to hang out at their house all the time. But it was never like they're rich, or it was just, they were just one of, the kids were just one of the guys, and their dad, they were real men. Like they were, they weren't, I don't know how to put it in the right terms, but they were just real men. They had integrity. They were just, quality dudes. Like Carlos, like he was another one that they'll kick your ass in a second. Like if you got out of line, you're gonna get they're gonna get your ass handed to you. So it was a respect that we had for them. And there's a lot of men in our community, like the black men of my father and his contemporaries. They were all real men. Like you couldn't. So like if I got out of line, somebody told my father, somebody could beat my ass and it's not a problem. Mm-hmm. And they send you home to your father. Or if they catch you doing something, I remember Miss Qualls, she had a large family and they just held you accountable to certain things. Mr. Charlie, Miss Geraldine, they were like the grandparents of the projects. We were not blood to them, but that's my grandfather, that's my grandmother. She would beat me with a switch, you know what I mean? Like, and then send me home to get an ass whooping from my parents if we were out of line. And that's the way we grew up. Everybody took care of everybody and overseeing everything. Now it's like, oh, you touch Johnny, I'm calling the police. Don't my kid could do no wrong. It's like if a parent said your kid was doing wrong, you're gonna beat your kid's ass. You're taking the parent's word over the kid, you know what I mean? And that's just the way it was back then.
Donnie, just to tell you, because I've seen so many people in Broadway, they talk about him. He really does a lot, especially you come here, you see what he does for the kids, and I know what he does and works with so many kids. Like you work with Pop Warner and stuff like that.
The thing was, even with the gym, so.
When did this gym open?
So it was,
How many years ago about?
This gym is extension from Mena Iron first. It was in Airport Plaza.
Men of Iron?
Was Airport Plaza first, and then it was Tommy Mitchell, who ended up being the chief of police. He was partnered with another officer, I think, from Hazlitt.
TNT, right?
And then he went to TNT, which was across the street on 22 West Front Street.
Men of Iron is an amazing.
Yeah, that's a cool. And no, before that, they were at where it was the bagel shop, across from the high school. Then they moved over here, and when I came to the town, I was just ripping through. I saw the gym that was like, it reminded me of Atlantic. Right. I ran in there. It was old school, very similar to Atlantic, and I met a kid, Evan Duche. He was working at the front desk. He was a high school kid working. He was like actually the first person I met in Keyport. And I just fell in love with the gym. So then, I knew I had a good gym to come to,
And that gym was called Men of Iron?
No, it was Men of Iron first, then it was TNT when I joined.
Why did Men of Iron get changed to TNT?
I think he was partners and then they split. So when he split, he started his own.
Was Men of Iron no women allowed, or?
I have no idea, but I heard it was a hardcore spot.
So we got Ray's House of Iron, right. Men of Iron, and TNT, which I trained Tom's son, TJ, who was a strong.
I'm going to tell you a cool story, because he's the one that told me, he's seen all the stuff I was doing. He said, you remind me of Zach. And then he told me about you. This is before social media, I think. And that's when I went to see your gym, but you weren't there.
Oh, the Edison.
And I looked in the window, and then, you were right in the parking lot, away
next
from
Apollon.
Right.
Yep.
And I was like, oh shit. And so when I looked at that, and this is when I was just training at TNT. When I looked at your spot, I was like, I can do this too, because TNT upstairs was about, that it was.
I think I had like 1,600 square feet. You know how I got into that first spot was the previous owner of Apollon Gym. Apollon was known as a quote unquote hardcore gym. I would say back then it was Manoli had bought it. And I would say it wasn't that hardcore. Dynamic Fitness, which closed down when I was younger, that was hardcore. But Manoli got it, and then some years later, up the street, you guys probably remember seeing this transition. Like bodybuilding started becoming like not cool, and then it was like magazines came out like fitness, like guys that just kind of looked fit, but where I was like, what is this shit? Right. Then gyms opened up, and every gym started getting fancy. Like you gotta have air conditioning, spin class, body pump. So a gym opened up right up the street, maybe a quarter mile from Apollon. Yeah. So I think Manoli was like, man, we need to compete. So he rented the garage and turned it into like kickbox aerobics. So anyway, that didn't work, all right? Which is a sign or a story / lesson of like, just stick to what is in your heart. Now, Manoli was more of a business guy who wasn't a lifter. So when I went in to look at it, I had been training TJ and guys out of the garage. Well, this was now they like made it into like a gambling place. It was like tinted out. So when he showed it to me and he opened the door, there was like, I don't understand gambling. There was like different poker tables. And so I like took over like an illegal like gambling. And so I remember looking at the place. I was like, this place looks huge, but the windows were tinted out. And so I remember like making a deal with Manoli of like, hey man, like give me like rent that's like cheaper the first few months, and then I'll do regular rent. But I remember going in there and, making a lot of stuff and, listening to you guys about the guys who made equipment. Somebody asked me the other day, I said, when I bought first used equipment, I got it from newspaper classified ads. There's no photos. You just saw like bench for sale and dumbbells. You call the person and then you go and do it. And then actually I bought equipment from, you guys have probably never heard of it, but it was called Pumps Gym. It was in Newark, and it was not far from Diamond Gym. And it was on a residential street, and it was kind of like, I would say it was about the size of this, higher ceilings, a little narrower, and you walk through and there's the gym, then a doorway, and then a machine shop. So when I walked in, there was the owner cutting steel. But his squat racks were like drilled into the ceiling. The leg press, everything was welded. All the dumbbells were welded. So even back then, This would have been 2000. Man, he was selling the gym, actually. I don't know if you guys know this story. I saw the gym for sale in the newspaper classified. I think it was for sale for $10,000. And I was saving money every month to get a diamond ring. I think my wife knows the story, but so I'm like, oh man, $10,000? I might take this money instead of the diamond ring. I'll buy this gym and I'm gonna have like another diamond gym. And the way they worded it in the newspaper was like not far from Seton Hall University. That was kind of to like mask the fact that I was in the hood. So I go to this place and I'm in the hood. And I was like, where is this like nice, Seton Hall thing? I pull up and I go in, I see the guy cutting steel and I look and I remember having like a conversation with my dad about this beforehand. Like, listen, I might buy this gym and as soon as I'm done working at the school, I'll commute to Newark. I'll run this gym till midnight. So basically what I did was I just purchased any York equipment. So I bought a lot of York plates. I bought some of his dumbbells that were welded together. And they were York plates, Wonder, barbell, stuff like that. So yeah, I wound up not, taking the money for the diamond ring, but I took those weights and set it up in the garage. And that would have been, I remember I was working at a middle school, so I was a 5th-year teacher, so it would have been either the fall of 2002 or like the winter of 2003. And so, did you ever hear of Pump's Gym?
It sounds familiar, but I'm thinking go-go spot.
Right, it sounds like a go-go spot. Right? I don't think it was powerlifters. It was just like the guy was a welder, and it was, I think, like a neighborhood gym.
Red Brick Gym, I always heard it.
I had heard of that. Newark, right?
Yeah.
I had heard of that. So I want you guys to share your story. So when you came here, it's Men of Iron, then TNT.
And then, so what happened was CrossFit was rolling in.
Yes.
Right? So, and that was a cool way to get a franchise.
Sure.
You were affiliated with them.
I was a $500 a year CrossFit affiliate.
Right. So what happened was, I had intended on doing, there was a garage for sale, for rent in town. And that was the direction I was going to go, functional training and still, barbell lifting, all of that. So I go to Tom and I say, hey, Tom, I'm thinking about putting a gym in town, because the real estate was cheap back then.
It was.
And I said, but I don't want to conflict with you. How do you feel about it? If you're against it, I'll go to another town.
Yep. And
then he pulled me aside. He said, yo, I'm about to retire. I'm out of here. Nobody knows.
First of all, the ethics in doing that is very rare. Like, you know what I tell coaches? If you work for somebody and you are an entrepreneur and you want to open your own thing, you don't need to sign a non-compete. Just move 20 minutes away. Don't. Right. But a lot of guys don't do that.
No ethics.
Yeah.
So this is how gyms are handed to you. So I go to him. So he pulls me aside. He said, buy my gym. He said, I'm out of here. I'm retiring. I'm moving to Florida. I said, really? I didn't know it was for sale. And he was like, yeah. So I said, I don't know if I could,
Did you have to get a bank loan, or what'd you have to do?
I'll get to it.
He keeps me hanging on the story. He's a great storyteller.
We go through it, and I'm like, I don't know if I could work it out. And that's when I went and looked at your spot.
I wish I was there. I could have met you 15 years ago.
And I said, okay, I can do it. So I come back and I said, yeah, I can CrossFit in here.
Yeah.
And I said, I got the best of both worlds. I still have the machines and the weights on the first floor, and I'll CrossFit on the top floor.
Which I still believe would be a good and is a good model.
So a funny story about that. I got to get up to. He gave me a great price for the gym. Mm-hmm. Like, it was unbelievable. And he was like, he dug me a lot. He said, "You're the one person I would sell it to that I know would make it bigger. You're gonna, take it to the next level." So he cut me a deal I don't think he would have cut for anybody else. But still, I was short. And I had a very good friend of mine. He's a brother of mine. He passed away. His name is Rich Chandler. And we were in the music industry together. He was my right-hand man. And so he owned a couple of restaurants in the Poconos, and make a long story short, I was short, and so I give him a call. So I told Tommy, you know, it was Sunday. He was like, "Where you gonna get money from on a Sunday?" You know. So I drive to the Poconos. My man, you know, he hooks me up. I drive back. Tommy has his lawyer right there, and you know, we're in his living room in Hazlitt.
Yep.
And then we cut the deal, and the rest is history. And you know, I'm forever indebted that he trusted me with his baby. And Tommy's a real good dude, stand-up dude, and he you know, he believed in me. Yeah.
Do we got somebody that's coming up? You got a question for him? We're gonna take a quick break, Isaiah.